By 11:40 that night, my chest felt tight, and my daughter still hadn't come. The clock on the microwave glared those neon green numbers at me in the dark. The house was so quiet I could hear the wind rattling the back door frame, a lonely, hollow sound that seemed to echo right through my bones. I wasn't looking at the clock because I was excited for the new year. I wasn't counting down the seconds to champagne or confetti or a kiss at midnight. I was looking at it because the pharmacy had closed 3 hours ago. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps, and my driveway was still empty. But to understand why I was lying on my living room rug, staring at the dust motes dancing in the light of the television, you have to understand that I am not a careless woman. I am 72 years old, and I have lived alone for 10 years since my husband, Robert, passed. You don't live alone at my age without being organized. You can't afford to be messy. I have a system for everything. Tuesday is laundry, Friday is groceries, and every single evening at 7:00 p.m. sharp, I take my insulin. I have been a diabetic for 15 years. I know the drill. I know the consequences. It was 7:00 p.m. on New Year's Eve when the night actually began. I was in the bathroom, humming a little tune. I felt good. I had put on a nice cardigan, even though I wasn't going anywhere. I think it's important to keep your dignity, even if the only person seeing you is the cat. I reached into the medicine cabinet for my fresh vial of insulin. It was a brand new bottle, full to the brim, enough to last me weeks. My hands have been bad lately. The arthritis comes and goes like bad weather. Some days I can knit a scarf, other days I can hardly hold a teaspoon. Tonight, I didn't feel the stiffness until it was too late. My fingers just rebelled. They didn't listen to me. They jerked just a fraction of an inch, but that was enough. The vial slipped. It seemed to fall in slow motion. I remember gasping, my hand snatching at the air, trying to catch it, but I was too slow. Smash! It hit the tile floor. It didn't just crack, it shattered. A million little diamonds of glass exploded across the white tiles, and immediately that distinct, sterile smell filled the small room. The clear liquid, my lifeline, seeped into the grout, turning the white cement gray. I stood there, freezing cold, staring down at the mess. My heart gave a hard, painful thump against my ribs. "No," I whispered. "Oh, please, no." I looked at my watch. 7:05 p.m. It was New Year's Eve. My local pharmacy, the one just down the street, closed at 6:00 p.m. for the holiday. I knew that. I had checked the schedule. That's why I had the bottle ready. The nearest 24-hour pharmacy was 25 minutes away by highway, and I don't drive on the highway at night anymore. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and the glare of the oncoming headlights blinds me. Panic is a cold thing. It started in my stomach and worked its way up to my throat. My sugar had already been running high since lunch. I could feel that telltale dryness in my mouth starting to set in. I needed that dose. Not tomorrow, not in the morning. I needed it tonight. I grabbed a towel to throw over the glass. I'd clean it up later, and I hurried to the phone in the kitchen. My hands were shaking so badly I misdialed the first time. I took a deep breath. "Calm down, Susan," I told myself. "You have family. You are not alone in this world." I dialed my daughter, Jessica. It rang 3 times. Then the line opened, and I was hit with a wall of noise. "Hello," she shouted over the sound. It wasn't a party yet. It was a car. I could hear the engine humming loudly, the turn signal clicking tick-tick-tick, and the bass of a pop song vibrating the speakers. There were other voices, too, girls laughing in the backseat. "Jessica, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've had an accident." "Hold on, guys, shut up for a second," she yelled away from the phone. The laughter died down, but the music kept thumping. "Mom, what? Are you hurt? Did you fall?" No, I'm fine," I said quickly. I never want to scare her. "I'm physically fine. It's my insulin. I dropped the bottle, Jess. It shattered. I don't have any for tonight, and my numbers are already creeping up. There was a pause, then the sound of her hitting the steering wheel. Mom, she groaned. Seriously, tonight, it's New Year's Eve. I know, I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. I felt like a naughty child being scolded. I know, honey. My hands they slipped. The local pharmacy is closed. I can't drive to the 24-hour one on the highway in the dark. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency. I am literally driving to the city right now, she said, her voice tight with stress. We have that VIP table at the downtown hotel. The tickets were $300, Mom. If we aren't there by 9:00 to claim the wristbands, we lose the table. I gripped the phone cord. Jessica, please, it's on your way. You have to pass the pharmacy to get downtown. It will take 10 minutes. Please, I don't want to end up in the hospital. I heard one of her friends in the background say, "Is everything okay?" And Jessica sighed loudly. Okay, fine, she snapped. Call it in, I'll swing by, but I am not coming in, okay? I'm going to throw the bag in your mailbox, and I'm keeping the engine running. In the mailbox? I asked. I looked out the front window. My driveway is long, and the temperature had dropped below freezing. The walkway hadn't been salted. It would be a sheet of ice by now. Yes, the mailbox, she said. I can't pull all the way in and get stuck behind your neighbor's truck again. Just grab it from there. I have to go. Okay, I whispered. I didn't dare ask her to bring it to the door. I didn't want to push my luck. If I complained about the ice, she might not come at all. That's fine, honey. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be there by 8:30, she said. Make sure it's ready. She hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't mind. I was just so grateful. I called the pharmacy immediately. The pharmacist was kind, told me it would be ready in 20 minutes. I was safe. My daughter was coming. I spent the next hour preparing. I went back to the bathroom and carefully swept up the glass. I got down on my hands and knees, which isn't easy with my hips, and wiped up the sticky liquid with a wet rag. I wanted the house to be nice when she stopped by, even if she wasn't coming inside. Then I sat down in my favorite armchair by the front window. It was 8:00 p.m. I watched the street. It was a quiet neighborhood. Most of the houses had their lights off, people out celebrating. Across the street, the Miller family was shooting off small sparklers in the driveway. I smiled, watching the children run around, seeing their breath puff out in white clouds in the freezing air. It was bitter cold out there. I hoped I wouldn't slip when I walked to the mailbox. 8:15 p.m. I checked my phone. No texts, that was good. That meant she was driving. She was making good time. My stomach gave a little rumble, but then a wave of nausea rolled over me. My mouth felt like it was full of cotton balls. I took a sip of water, but it didn't help. The thirst was starting. That deep, unquenchable thirst that every diabetic fears. She's a good girl, I thought to myself, closing my eyes for a moment. She's busy, she's stressed, but she's a good girl. She wouldn't let me down. I thought about how she looked when she was little, waiting for me to pick her up from school. The way her face would light up when she saw my car. I had never been late for her, not once. Rain, snow, sleet, or flu, if Jessica needed to be picked up, I was there. That's just what mothers do. 8:30 p.m. I leaned forward, looking down the street. A pair of headlights swept around the corner. My heart lifted. Here she is. The car slowed down, and I started to push myself up from the chair, but then it sped up again. It was just a neighbor coming home. I sat back down. Traffic, I told myself. It's New Year's Eve. The traffic must be terrible near the mall. She's probably just stuck at a light. I looked at the shattered glass and the clear liquid seeping into the grout in my memory. I thought that was the disaster. I thought the worst thing that happened to me tonight was a slippery finger and a broken bottle. But as the clock on the wall ticked to 8:45 and the street outside remained dark and empty, a new feeling started to settle in my gut. It wasn't the sickness yet. It was something heavier. I didn't know it then, but the disaster wasn't the broken bottle. The disaster was the person I was counting on to fix it. By 9:00 p.m., the silence in the house had changed. At 8:00, the silence felt expectant. It was the kind of quiet you get right before a guest arrives, the hush of a swept floor and a ready smile. But by 9:00, the silence had turned heavy. It pressed against the windows like the freezing darkness outside. It settled into the corners of the room, thick and suffocating. I was still sitting in my armchair by the window, my hands folded in my lap. I hadn't moved for 30 minutes, afraid that if I got up, I might miss the flash of her headlights turning into the drive. "She's just stuck," I whispered to the empty room. My voice sounded thin, raspy. "It's New Year's Eve. The checkout lines must be a mile long." I tried to picture it. I closed my eyes and imagined Jessica standing in the bright fluorescent light of the pharmacy, tapping her foot, checking her watch. I imagined she was annoyed, yes, but she was there. She was doing this for me. I looked at my phone. It sat on the armrest, the screen dark. I wanted to call her. My thumb hovered over her name, but I hesitated. I didn't want to be that mother. You know, the kind, the one who nags. Jessica was 32 years old. She knew it was an emergency if I called now, while she was probably arguing with a pharmacist or sitting in gridlock traffic. I would just be adding to her stress. So instead of calling, I opened the text messages. My fingers felt stiff, clumsy. "Are you close?" I stared at the message for a moment. It felt needy. I backspaced. "Traffic bad." No, that sounded passive-aggressive. I sighed and typed the simplest truth I could manage. "Just checking in. Let me know when you're 5 mins away." Sent 9:08 p.m. I watched the screen, waiting for the little read receipt to appear. Or those 3 little bouncing dots. Nothing. I set the phone down, but I couldn't settle back. A fierce, demanding thirst had taken hold of me. It wasn't just a dry mouth. It felt like I had swallowed a handful of desert sand. My tongue felt thick and swollen, sticking to the roof of my mouth. I pushed myself up from the chair. It took more effort than usual. My legs felt heavy, like they were filled with wet cement. I walked to the kitchen, my slippers shuffling on the hardwood floor. I poured a glass of water from the tap and drank it down in one long gulp. It was cold, wonderful, shocking. I poured another, drank it, then a third. It didn't help. The water hit my stomach, sloshing around, but the thirst remained, scratching at my throat. I leaned against the kitchen counter, catching my breath. And that's when I noticed the sound. Halahoo. It was a deep, rhythmic, gasping sound. It took me a moment to realize the sound was coming from me. I wasn't running. I wasn't climbing stairs. I was just standing there, leaning against the granite, but my chest was heaving like I had just finished a marathon. It was a terrifying, primal hunger for air. In, out, deep, slow. My body was trying to breathe off the poison building up in my blood, but I didn't know the science then. I just knew that no matter how deep I breathed, it felt like I was drowning on dry land. 9:45 p.m. I made my way back to the living room. The street outside was pitch black. I picked up the phone again. 9:48 p.m. Still no reply to my text. And suddenly the fear shifted. It wasn't annoyance anymore. It was cold, hard terror. Why isn't she answering? Jessica lives on her phone. She sleeps with it under her pillow. She texts while she drives, even though I tell her not to. If she hasn't answered in 45 minutes, it's not because she's ignoring me. "Oh God," I whispered, my hand flying to my mouth. The ice. The roads were freezing over. I had sent her out into the busiest, most dangerous night of the year. The image hit me with the force of a physical blow. Jessica's car spun out in a ditch. Shattered glass. The pharmacy bag on the passenger seat. Her phone ringing and ringing in a wrecked car while sirens wailed in the distance. "It's the police," I said aloud, tears springing to my eyes. "That's why she's not answering. She's been pulled over, or worse, she's in an ambulance right now." Guilt, hot and sickly, washed over me. I had forced her to do this. I had been so clumsy, so stupid with that bottle, and now my daughter was hurt. I was sitting here worrying about my sugar while she was probably bleeding on the side of the highway. I had to check. I had to know if she had tried to make it. I stood up again. The room tilted violently to the left. I grabbed the back of the chair to steady myself. The dizziness washed over me in a wave, making the floor seem to pitch like the deck of a boat. "Focus, Susan," I commanded. I stumbled to the front door. I opened it, and the winter air hit me like a knife. It was bitter, biting cold. I stepped out onto the porch. The concrete was slick with a thin layer of black ice. I gripped the railing with both hands, my knuckles white. I looked down the long driveway toward the mailbox. "Jessica," I called out. My voice was snatched away by the wind immediately. I squinted into the darkness. I needed to see if she had come by and just forgotten to text, if she had dropped the medicine off and rushed back to the road. I looked at the driveway. Under the porch light, the ground was illuminated clearly. It had started snowing lightly an hour ago, dusting the black asphalt in a pristine layer of white powder. And that's when my heart stopped. The snow was perfect. It was a smooth, unbroken sheet of white. There were no tire tracks, no footprints, no disturbed slush. No one had been here. Not a car, not a person. She hadn't come. She hadn't even tried. I stared at that untouched snow, my brain trying to process what my eyes were seeing. If she had been in an accident on the way here, there would be no tracks. But if she had crashed, surely the hospital would have called me. She is my emergency contact. I backed inside and closed the door, leaning against it, gasping for air. That deep, labored breathing was getting louder. Ha-ha-hoo. 10:15 p.m. I crawled back to the armchair. I didn't sit this time, I slumped. My phone was still silent. Maybe she's at the hospital, I tried. To reason, desperate to keep the villain out of the story. Maybe her battery died. I dialed her number again. My fingers were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. Rings, ring, ring. "Please pick up," I prayed. "Just tell me you're okay. I don't care about the medicine anymore. Just tell me you're alive." Ring, click. "Hey, you've reached Jessica. I'm probably having a blast somewhere, so leave a message." Her voicemail, bright, bubbly, and completely indifferent to the silence that followed it. I hung up without leaving a message. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and stinging. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because the confusion was starting to fracture. My brain felt foggy, like it was stuffed with cotton wool. I was having trouble stringing thoughts together, but the image of that unbroken snow kept burning behind my eyelids. She isn't here, she isn't hurt. If she was hurt, someone would call. I closed my eyes, just for a second. The heaviness in my limbs was turning into a seductive pull towards sleep. I wanted to just drift off. It would be so easy to just close my eyes and let the thirst and the nausea fade away into the dark. But a small, sharp instinct in the back of my mind, the part of me that wanted to live, pricked me. "If you go to sleep now, Susan, you are not going to wake up." I forced my eyes open. The room was swimming. The clock on the microwave was a blur of green. 10:30 p.m. I realized then that my politeness was a mistake. My patience was a weapon that was being used against me. I had spent the last 2 hours making excuses for a woman who hadn't sent a single text message to her sick mother. I told myself she was doing me a favor. You don't nag someone who is saving your life. So I sat in the dark, clutching my phone, practicing patience while my body slowly started to shut down. The time between 10:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. didn't feel like time at all. It felt like a fever dream, a series of blurry snapshots that didn't quite fit together. One moment, I was staring at the microwave clock. The next, I was on the floor. I don't remember falling. I don't remember my legs giving out. I just remember the sudden, jarring shift in perspective. The ceiling was suddenly very far away, and the smell of the dust in the carpet was very close. I tried to push myself up, planting my hands on the rug, but my arms shook violently and collapsed. It wasn't that I was tired. It was that my muscles had simply stopped taking orders. They felt like lead, heavy and useless. The thirst was agonizing now. It was a physical weight in my chest. I could smell something sweet and sickly, like rotting apples or nail polish remover. It took me a long, foggy minute to realize the smell was coming from my own breath. Ketones, a distant, nurse-like voice in my head whispered, "You're toxic, Susan. Your blood is turning into acid." I rolled onto my side, gasping for air. That terrible, deep breathing was louder now, ha-ha-hoo, filling the silent living room. It sounded like a bellows fanning a dying fire. My phone was still in my hand. I had gripped it so tight my fingers had cramped around the case. 11:35 p.m. The television was still on in the corner. I had left it on for the company, for the noise. The volume was low, but I could hear the excitement in the voices of the hosts. They were in Times Square. They were wearing glittery hats and blowing noisemakers. The crowd was cheering. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was waiting for the magic moment. I looked at the phone screen. The light hurt my eyes. "One last time," I rasped. My voice was barely a whisper. "Please, Jessica, be almost here." I pressed her name. I didn't hold the phone to my ear. I just put it on speaker and laid it on the carpet next to my face. Ring, the sound was piercing in the quiet house. Ring, I imagined her in the car, seeing my name pop up. I imagined her sighing, rolling her eyes to her friends. Ugh, it's my mom again. Ring, or maybe the phone was buzzing in an empty purse in a coat check room, buried under a pile of scarves, flashing silently in the dark. Click. "Hey, you've reached Jessica. I'm probably having a blast somewhere, so leave a message." The beep that followed was the loneliest sound I have ever heard in my life. I didn't speak. I didn't have the breath to leave a message, and I didn't have the heart to beg anymore. I just tapped the red button and ended the call. That was the moment the hope finally died. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic heartbreak. It was a quiet, crushing realization. She wasn't stuck in traffic. She wasn't in a ditch. She wasn't dealing with a dead battery. She just wasn't coming. She knew I needed this medicine. She knew I was scared. And she had decided that whatever she was doing, drinking, dancing, laughing, was more important than the fact that her mother was dying on the living room floor. I closed my eyes, and a wave of nausea rolled over me, violent and sharp. I retched, boo. Nothing came up. My body was empty. I am going to die here, I thought. I am going to die on this rug, and she is going to find me tomorrow, and she is going to say she got lost. And then anger. It was a small spark, weak and flickering, but it was there. It burned through the fog in my brain. No. I gritted my teeth. No, I am not going to let her off the hook that easily. I am not going to die just because she is selfish. I looked at the phone again. My vision was tunneling, the edges of the room turning black. I couldn't see the numbers clearly anymore. The keypad was just a blur of light. I tried to lift my finger to dial 911, but my hand just twitched. I couldn't coordinate the movement. Voice, I thought, use your voice. I gathered every ounce of saliva I had left in my desert-dry mouth. My tongue felt swollen, too big for my jaw. Hey Siri, I tried to say. But it didn't come out like that. It came out as a slur. Hey Siri. The phone stayed dark. It didn't beep. It didn't recognize me. Call 911, I tried again. Call 911. The words were mush. My speech was gone. I sounded like I was drunk or like I'd had a stroke. The betrayal of my own body terrified me more than the pain. The technology that was supposed to save me couldn't understand me because I was already too far gone. Then I remembered the emergency button. I didn't wear a life alert necklace. I was too vain for that. I always told myself I wasn't that old yet. But the iPhone, the side button, if you hold it down. I gripped the phone with both hands, shaking uncontrollably. I squeezed the side buttons with all the strength I had left in my arthritic, trembling fingers. Beep, beep, beep. A countdown appeared on the screen. Calling emergency services in 321. 911, what is your emergency? The voice was a woman. She sounded calm. She sounded like an angel. Help, I whispered. The word tasted like ash. Diabetic, alone. Ma'am, can you hear me? I need your address. 12 Oak Street, I wheezed. Each word cost me something. Okay, honey, I have you. We're dispatching a unit now. They are 3 minutes out. Is the door unlocked? I froze. The door, the deadbolt. I always locked the deadbolt at night. Robert used to insist on it, and I never broke the habit. Ma'am, the operator said, her voice a little sharper now. If the door is locked, they can't get in. Can you crawl to the door and unlock it for them? I looked at the front door. It was 20 feet away. It might as well have been 20 miles. I tried to move my leg. I sent the command from my brain, lift the knee, push. Nothing happened. My legs were dead weight. They felt like they belonged to someone else. I clawed at the carpet with my fingernails, trying to drag myself, but I couldn't generate the force. I was paralyzed by the poison in my blood. I choked out, a sob rising in my throat. I can't. Okay, the operator said. That's okay. Don't try to move if you can't. Just stay with me. I tried to listen to her, but the television was getting louder. Or maybe my head was just spinning faster. The crowd in New York was screaming. They were starting the chant. 10. Help is coming, ma'am. Just hang on. 9. I looked at the hallway. I wondered if the house was clean enough for the paramedics. I wondered if they would see the dust on the baseboards. 8. Jessica, I whispered. I don't know why I said her name. Maybe I was cursing her. 7. The darkness was closing in now. The tunnel was just a pinprick of light. The thirst had stopped hurting. Now I just felt cold. So incredibly cold. 6. 5. I saw lights flashing through the front window. Not fireworks, red and white, rotating, sweeping across the ceiling like a lighthouse beam. 4. They're here, the operator said. Do you hear them? 3. I heard heavy boots running on the porch. I heard a fist pounding on the wood. EMS, fire department, anyone inside. 2. I tried to yell, I'm here, but only a dry croak came out. 1. Happy New Year, the television screamed. Auld Lang Syne started playing, a mournful, nostalgic tune. At the exact moment the world cheered for a new beginning, I felt my consciousness slip away. There was a loud crash at the door, then another. Bam, bam. Clear it, a man's voice yelled. The sound that followed was terrible. Wood splintering. Metal screeching against metal. The heavy crack of the frame giving way under the force of a battering ram or a heavy boot. The paramedic had to break the door frame to get in. The wood splintering was the loudest sound in the house. I remember thinking, just before the blackness took me completely, that sounds expensive. Jessica is going to be so angry about the cost. I didn't wake up all at once. It was a slow, reluctant return, like swimming up from the bottom of a very deep, very dark lake. First there was the sound, beep, beep, beep. It was a steady, rhythmic chirp, nothing like the erratic pounding of my heart from the night before. Then came the smell, sharp, chemical. It smelled like rubbing alcohol in floor wax, a scent that immediately told my brain, "You are not in your living room anymore." I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt glued shut. My mouth was no longer dry. In fact, it felt strange, like I had been chewing on cotton, but the agonizing desert thirst was gone. I forced my eyes open. The light was blinding. Fluorescent tubes hummed overhead, stark and white against a drop ceiling of perforated tiles. I blinked, trying to clear the haze. I was lying in a narrow bed with metal rails pulled up on the sides. There were tubes everywhere. A clear line ran into the back of my hand, taped down with aggressive amounts of medical tape. Another tube seemed to be clipped to my finger. I turned my head to the side. It felt heavy, like a bowling ball. A woman in blue scrubs was standing by a computer monitor, typing quietly. She looked young, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Am I croaked. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. The nurse turned immediately. Her face softened into a professional, practiced smile. "Well, look who's back with us. Happy New Year, Susan." "New Year," I whispered. "It's January 1st, she said, walking over to the bedside and checking the drip on my IV bag. "About 10:00 a.m. You gave us quite a scare last night. Your blood sugar was over 800 when the paramedics brought you in. You were in severe DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. Do you remember what happened?" I stared at the ceiling tile above me. It had a water stain shaped like a rabbit. Did I remember? I remembered the clock, 11:42 p.m. I remembered the sound of the wood splintering. Crack. I remembered the thought about the cost. "The door," I mumbled. "They broke the door." The nurse chuckled softly, patting my arm. "Better a broken door than a broken heart, right? The fire department had to make an entry. You were unresponsive." She adjusted my pillow. Her hands were warm. "You're lucky, Susan. Another hour and we might be having a very different conversation. Your kidneys took a hit, but we're flushing them out. You're going to be okay." Okay. I let the words settle in the air. I was alive. I had survived. And then the instinct kicked in. The same instinct that makes a mother scan a playground for her child or check the backseat of the car. I turned my head to the other side of the bed, toward the window. There was a vinyl reclining chair pushed against the wall. It was the kind of chair meant for visitors, for husbands who hold hands, for daughters who wait anxiously through the night. The chair was empty. It was perfectly pushed in. The vinyl was smooth. No coat draped over the back, no purse on the floor, no sleeping figure curled up under a hospital blanket. I looked back at the nurse. A cold knot formed in my stomach, tighter and colder than the illness had ever been. "My daughter," I said. It wasn't a question, really. It was a plea. "Jessica." The nurse's smile faltered, just a fraction of an inch. She looked down at her clipboard, then back at me. There was a flicker of pity in her eyes that I hated. I didn't want pity. I wanted my daughter. "How did you know who I was?" I asked, a sudden panic rising. "Maybe you didn't call her. Maybe you didn't know." "We knew," the nurse said gently. "The police officer who secured your house brought your handbag in with the ambulance. He wanted to make sure your ID and keys were safe. We found your emergency contact information in your wallet." "Jessica," I nodded. "Jessica is my emergency contact." Yes, the nurse said. She hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. We called her Susan. And we left 3 messages, the nurse said, her voice careful. One when you arrived at midnight, one at 3:00 a.m. when you stabilized, and the shift change nurse called her again at 8:00 a.m. We marked them all as urgent, medical emergency in the voicemail system. I stared at her, and she didn't pick up. No, the nurse said, and she hasn't called back. Ignored. It wasn't that the lines were down. It wasn't that her mailbox was full. It was that she saw a number she didn't recognize, or perhaps she saw the hospital caller ID, and she chose not to answer. My phone, I whispered. Where is my phone? The nurse reached into the drawer of the bedside table and pulled out my smartphone. It's almost dead, she said apologetically. We didn't have a charger that fit. She handed it to me. The battery icon was red, 12%. I tapped the screen. It lit up, bright and unforgiving. No new notifications. There were no texts, no missed calls from Jessica. No, Mom, are you okay? No, sorry, I missed you. Just the date, January 1st. I stared at that empty screen until it went black again. I closed my eyes. The tears came then, hot and silent, sliding down into my ears. It was New Year's Day. It was 10:00 in the morning. While I was being loaded onto a stretcher, my body shutting down, Jessica was counting down to midnight. While the doctors were fighting to get an IV into my collapsed veins, Jessica was probably cheering, kissing someone, toasting with champagne. While I was lying in this bed, hooked up to machines that were breathing for me, Jessica was sleeping off a hangover, completely unaware that her mother had almost ceased to exist. She has a party, I said, my voice trembling. She had a VIP table. The nurse looked confused, but she didn't ask. She just grabbed a tissue and dabbed at my cheeks. Do you have anyone else we can call? A neighbor, a friend? No, I said, just her, it's just us. Well, the nurse said, trying to be cheerful again, though her eyes were sad. I'm sure she'll check her messages soon. New Year's Eve is, well, people sleep in. Don't worry about it right now. You need to rest. She bustled out of the room to tend to another patient, leaving me alone with the beeping monitor. I looked at the empty chair again. I had spent my life filling chairs for Jessica. I sat in the front row of every school play, even the ones where she was a tree. I sat in the bleachers at every graduation. I sat in the waiting room when she got her tonsils out, refusing to leave until I saw her eyes open. I thought that's how it worked. I thought love was a currency, that if you poured enough of it into someone, they would have enough stored up to give some back to you when you needed it. But looking at that empty vinyl chair and that silent black phone, I realized the bank was empty. I was bankrupt. I imagined her waking up right now, probably in her own bed or maybe at a friend's house. She would be reaching for a glass of water, complaining about a headache. She would see the missed calls from the hospital and, what? Panic. Or just roll her eyes and go back to sleep. The realization hit me with the force of the heart attack I didn't have. I could be dead right now. I could be in the morgue downstairs, tagged and bagged, and she would still be sleeping. The world would have moved on without me, and the one person who was supposed to anchor me to this earth hadn't even bothered to listen to a voicemail marked emergency. I pulled the thin, scratchy hospital blanket up to my chin. The room was set to 72 degrees, but I was shivering. It wasn't the fever anymore. It was something internal. There is a special kind of cold that comes from hospital sheets, when you realize you are the only person in the world who cares if you wake up. The hours between 10:00 a.m. and 4:00 p.m. were a lesson in a specific kind of humiliation. The nurse, bless her heart, kept trying to make excuses. She would pop her head in every hour to check my vitals, her eyes darting to the empty chair, and she'd say things like, "The parking garage is a nightmare today," or, "I bet she's just charging her phone before she drives over." I just nodded. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Jessica knew exactly where the hospital was, and that Jessica's phone charged in her car. I lay there and watched the winter sun move across the floor tiles. I watched it touch the bed rail, then the blanket, and finally start to fade into the gray gloom of late afternoon. I had been awake and stable for 6 hours. My phone sat on the bedside table, silent. At 4:15 p.m., the door to my room finally whooshed open. I pushed myself up on my elbows, my heart giving a pathetic little flutter of hope. Foolishly, I expected tears. I expected her to rush in, hair flying, face pale with worry. I expected her to grab my hand and say, "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry, I was so scared." Instead, I heard the clack, clack, clack of heels. Jessica walked in. She was wearing the same clothes she must have worn the night before, a short, silver sequined dress that looked garish under the hospital lights, with an oversized men's coat thrown over her shoulders. She was wearing large, dark sunglasses, even though the hallway was dim. Her hair was a tangled mess, pulled into a hasty knot on top of her head. And she was holding a venti Starbucks cup. She didn't run to the bed. She didn't drop her bag. She stopped in the doorway, took a long sip of her coffee, and then winced as if the sound of the IV machine was hurting her ears. "Jesus, Mom," she said, her voice raspy and thick. "Can we lower the blinds? It is blinding in here." She walked over to the window, walking right past the foot of my bed without touching me, and yanked the cord to shut the blinds. Then she collapsed into the vinyl visitor's chair, letting out a groan as she massaged her temples. "My head is literally splitting," she muttered. "I have not slept, not a wink." I stared at her. I was too stunned to speak. I was hooked up to a cardiac monitor. My arm was purple from bruises where the IVs had blown, and she was complaining about a headache. "Jessica," I said softly, "where were you?" She pulled her sunglasses on the bridge of her nose and looked at me over the rim. Her eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with smudged black eyeliner that had settled into the cracks of her skin. She looked hungover, not tired from worry, hungover. I could smell it from the bed, that distinct, sour smell of stale champagne and cigarettes clinging to her coat. "I tried to come, Mom," she said, her voice dropping into a whine. "My night was a total nightmare. You have no idea." "You didn't answer the phone," I said. "The nurses called you 3 times. "My battery died," she exclaimed, throwing her hands up. "Okay, look, here is what happened. I left the party right after you called me at 7:30. I was worried sick. I was rushing to the car and I got into the parking garage downtown and my car wouldn't start. The battery was dead. And then my phone died because of the cold." She sniffed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "I was stranded in that freezing garage for 4 hours, Mom. 4 hours. I was crying, banging on the steering wheel, freezing to death. I didn't have fun at all. I spent my New Year's Eve huddled in the backseat of a dead car." I looked at her. Her face was pitiful, her voice cracked at the right moments. A part of me, the mother part, wanted to believe her. It explained everything. It explained why she didn't come. It explained why she didn't answer. It made her a victim, not a villain. "Oh, Jessica," I breathed, my resolve softening. I thought you just stayed at the party." "God, no," she looked offended. "I would never do that. I was miserable. And then, when I finally got a jump start this morning and drove to your house to bring you breakfast, that was the second nightmare." Her face shifted from self-pity to annoyance. "I pull up to the house, and the front door is literally hanging off its hinges. The paramedics completely destroyed the frame, Mom. It was wide open. Anyone could have walked in and robbed us. The TV, your jewelry, it was all exposed. The paramedics had to break in," I said quietly. I couldn't move, Jessica. I couldn't get to the door. She waved her hand dismissively. I know, but did they have to use a battering ram? It looks like a crime scene. I had to stand guard in the hallway for 2 hours waiting for a contractor to call me back because it's a holiday. I was freezing. She looked at me, her eyes wide with indignation. She wasn't angry that I had been unresponsive. She was angry that she had to stand in a drafty hallway. Well, why didn't you just call a locksmith first? She asked, as if that was a reasonable question. I was dying, I said. I called 911. She rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes. Okay, don't be dramatic. You're sitting right here. I'm just saying, next time, if you're feeling bad, just call an Uber to the ER before it gets that bad. Or call a taxi. Why did you wait until midnight to make a scene? Make a scene. The air left the room. The beeping of the monitor seemed to fade away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. She thought this was a scene. She thought I had staged a dramatic performance for attention on New Year's Eve. I waited, I said, my voice trembling, because you said you were coming. And now you tell me you were stuck in a garage. I was, she insisted. It was horrible. She took a final slurp of her coffee. The cup made that empty, gurgling sound. Then she stood up and placed the empty, soggy paper cup right on my rolling tray table, directly next to my water pitcher. She didn't put it in the trash can 3 feet away. She put it on my table, like I was her maid, like I was the help. Anyway, she sighed, digging into her oversized purse. The contractor is there now. He's boarding it up, but he wants cash or a check. He won't take a card. She pulled out a pen. Do you have your checkbook in your purse? The police brought it, right? I need you to sign a check for $500, right now, before he leaves. I looked at the water stain on the ceiling tile again. The rabbit. It looked less like a rabbit now and more like a warning. He needs it now, I asked. Yes, Mom, unless you want me to pay for it, which I can't, because my account is overdrawn from the holidays. So unless you want your house left open to the street. She held the pen out to me. She wasn't holding my hand. She was holding out a demand. Get my purse, I said softly. She grabbed my handbag from the bottom shelf of the bedside table, rummaging through it with zero hesitation. She found the checkbook, flipped it open to a blank check, and slapped it onto the tray table next to her trash. Just sign it, she said. I'll fill in the rest. I signed my name. My hand was shaking, but not from age. Okay, great, she said, ripping the check out. I'm going to run to the cafeteria to get a bagel. I am starving. Do you want anything? Actually, never mind. You probably can't eat sugar or whatever. She turned to leave. Jessica, I called. Out. What? She stopped, impatient. My phone, I said. The nurse said it needs a charger. Do you have yours? Yeah, it's in my bag, she said. She walked back, fished a charging cable out of her purse, and plugged my phone into the wall. I'll leave mine here to charge too while I eat. It's on 5%. She took her phone, her sleek, expensive smartphone in its glittery case, and plugged it into the second outlet. She set it down on the tray table, right next to mine. I'll be back in 20 minutes, she said. Try to rest. You look really pale. She turned and walked out, the sequins on her dress shimmering mockingly as she disappeared into the hallway. I lay back against the pillows. The nurse had told me that DKA can damage the heart muscle. She said I might feel some weakness. But as I watched the empty doorway, I didn't feel weak. She didn't ask how I was. She asked who was going to pay to fix the door frame. That was the moment my heart didn't break, it hardened. The room fell silent again, but the air felt different now. Before Jessica arrived, the silence had been lonely. Now it felt dirty. I looked at the rolling tray table. The empty Starbucks cup sat there like a monument to her indifference, a ring of brown coffee stain already forming on the clean white plastic. Next to it, our two phones lay side by side, connected to the wall by tangled white cords. Mine was old, cracked screen, 12% battery. Hers was new, glittering in a rhinestone case, pulsing with life. I laid my head back against the pillow and closed my eyes. I tried to force my brain to stop spinning. I tried to focus on the story she had just told me. She was stranded, I told myself. She was in a freezing parking garage. I replayed her words. I pictured my daughter huddled in the backseat of her sedan, her breath puffing out in white clouds, shivering in that thin sequined dress, banging on the steering wheel in frustration. It was a terrible image, and God help me, I clung to it. I wanted it to be true. I realized then that a mother's love is a form of survival instinct. We will twist reality into pretzels just to avoid seeing our children as monsters. If she was stranded, she was a victim. If she was a victim, then her absence wasn't a choice. It was a tragedy. If she was a victim, I could still love her without hating myself. Buzz. The sound cut through the room. I opened my eyes. It wasn't my phone. It was hers. The screen of Jessica's phone lit up, casting a bluish glow on the tray table. A notification banner sat across the center of the locked screen. I looked away. I am a private person. I don't snoop. I raised Jessica to respect privacy, and I respected hers. I stared at the door, willing her to come back and check it herself. Buzz, buzz. 2 more notifications stacked up. I glanced over. The text on the screen was large. I couldn't help but read it. Instagram Tiffany Zoe mentioned you in a story. Tiffany Zoe tagged you in a post. NYE dump. Best night ever clinking sparkles. Tiffany, that was Jessica's best friend. The one who supposedly drove the car. My heart gave a strange, syncopated thump. Best night ever. If they were stranded in a freezing garage for 4 hours, crying and panicked, why would Tiffany be posting about the best night ever? Don't look, I told myself. It's just a caption. Maybe they posted it before the car died. But the doubt had taken root. It was a cold, sliding thing in my gut. And suddenly I needed to know, not to catch her, but to save her. If the car died, I reasoned, she would have taken a picture of it. She documents everything. She would have taken a picture of the dead battery to show the mechanic, or a sad selfie in the cold to post on her story for sympathy. If I could find that photo, I could prove the doubt wrong. I could prove she was telling the truth. I reached out. My hand was trembling, the IV tube swaying with the movement. I touched the rhinestone case. I knew Jessica's passcode. She had used the same 4 digits since high school, the year she was born. She never changed it because she said she couldn't be bothered to remember new numbers. 1992. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the glass. If I did this, I was crossing a line. I was admitting that I needed evidence to believe my own child. But she let you lie on the floor. A voice inside me whispered. I tapped the code. The phone unlocked. It opened to her home screen. I ignored the Instagram notification. I didn't want to see Tiffany's post. I wanted hard evidence from the source. I tapped the colorful flower icon. Photos. The gallery opened. I scrolled past the memes and the screenshots to the bottom. Yesterday, I held my breath, waiting to see the dark, grainy photo of a car dashboard, or a tow truck, or a steering wheel. There were no photos of a car. There were no photos of a garage. There were only bursts of light. I saw a grid of videos and photos taken in rapid succession. I tapped the last one in the sequence. It filled the screen. It was a high-quality photo, taken with the flash on. The background was unmistakable, the ballroom of the downtown hotel. I could see the massive crystal chandelier in the back. I could see the crowd of people, blurred in motion. In the center of the frame was Jessica. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't banging on a steering wheel in despair. She was standing on a velvet chair, head thrown back in ecstatic laughter. Her silver dress was catching the light. In her left hand, she held a massive, burning sparkler, sending showers of gold sparks into the air. In her right hand, she held a martini glass, tilting it dangerously as she laughed at a man in a tuxedo who was holding her waist. She looked radiant. She looked alive. She looked like she didn't have a care in the world. I looked at the top of the screen, where the iPhone automatically displays the time the photo was taken. Yesterday, 11:55 p.m. 11:55 p.m. I stopped breathing. At 11:55 p.m., I was lying on my rug. At 11:55 p.m., my kidneys were shutting down. At 11:55 p.m., I was pressing the SOS button on my phone, listening to the operator count down the seconds until help arrived. She had looked me in the eye 10 minutes ago. She had sat in that chair, sipped her coffee, and told me a story about freezing in a garage. She had built a detailed, pitiful lie about a dead battery and a dead phone, just so I would feel sorry for her, just so I would sign the check. But at 5 minutes to midnight, while I was taking my last conscious breaths, she wasn't suffering. She was the life of the party. The nausea hit me hard. I swiped left. 12:05 a.m. A video of them kissing under the confetti. 12:30 a.m. A selfie in the bathroom mirror. 1:15 a.m. A photo of a late-night pizza slice. She hadn't been stranded. She had never left. She had ignored my calls not because her phone was dead, but because she didn't want to leave the party. She had gambled with my life because she didn't want to lose her table. I dropped the phone onto the tray table with a clatter. It landed face up, the screen still glowing with the image of her joy. The door to the room opened. "Got the bagel," Jessica announced, breezing back in. She had a smear of cream cheese on her lip. "And I got another coffee. God, I needed the caffeine." She flopped back into the chair. She looked at her phone on the tray table. The screen had gone dark again. "Did my phone buzz?" she asked, taking a bite of the bagel. "I'm expecting a text from the contractor." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the smear of cream cheese. I saw the cheap sequins. And I saw the monster I had been trying so hard to ignore. "Yes," I said, my voice was eerily calm. "It buzzed." "Probably just Tiffany," she mumbled, chewing with her mouth open. "She's posting all these embarrassing pics from last night. I haven't even looked at them yet." She reached for the phone. I didn't stop her. I didn't say a word. I just turned my head to look at the dark window. The image of the timestamp burned into my retinas. 11:55 p.m. I wasn't looking at my daughter anymore. I was looking at a stranger who had watched the clock strike midnight while I watched the clock run out. I watched Jessica unlock her phone. I held my breath, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had left the Photos app open on her phone. If she looked, if she just glanced at the screen, she would see the grid of photos. She would see that the last viewed image was the one of her standing on the chair at 11:55 p.m. She would know I knew. But Jessica didn't look. She didn't pause. She didn't check which app was open. With a practiced flick of her thumb, she swiped up, closing the gallery without even seeing it, and immediately tapped the green icon for her messages. She wasn't worried about being caught. It hadn't even crossed her mind that I might check. To her, I wasn't a detective. I was just her mother. And in Jessica's world, her mother believed whatever she was told. She groaned, typing furiously with one hand while holding her bagel with the other. "The contractor is being such a pain. He says he doesn't know the exact price yet because of the emergency holiday rates. He thinks it might be 600, maybe 7. Can you believe that? People are so greedy. Greedy, I repeated. The word felt heavy on my tongue. Right, she took a bite of the bagel, a crumb falling onto her sequined lap. She didn't brush it off. Good thing you left that check blank, Mom. If we had written 500, he probably would have walked off the job. My stomach dropped. The blank check. In the chaos of her arrival, the noise, the smell of coffee, the demand for a signature, I had let her rush me. She had slapped the checkbook down and said, "Just sign it, I'll fill in the rest." And I, conditioned by decades of trusting her, had signed my name on the bottom line without filling in the amount. I looked at her purse sitting on the floor. My check, my S. Signature was in there. A blank check. In the hands of a woman who had lied about being stranded to cover up a party. A woman who had just called a contractor greedy while holding a venti coffee she bought with money she claimed not to have. Mom, Jessica looked up, a dab of cream cheese on her chin. You're staring at me. Is there something on my face? No, I said softly. Nothing. I turned my head back to the window. The reflection in the glass showed the two of us. An old woman in a hospital bed, fading into the white sheets, and a vibrant young woman in a party dress, bursting with life. I thought I would be angry. I thought I would want to scream at her, to grab the phone and shove the timestamp in her face. I thought I would want to yell, "I saw the sparkler, I saw the martini, I saw the time." But I didn't want to scream. I felt too tired to scream. Screaming implies that you want to be heard. Screaming implies that you think the other person cares about your pain, and you just need to make them understand. You scream to fix things. I realized, looking at her reflection, that I didn't want to fix this, because this wasn't a mistake. She had weighed the two options in her mind. Option A, leave the party, miss the fun, and save her mother's life. Option B, stay at the party, keep the table, and gamble that her mother would survive until morning. She had done the math, and she had decided that the risk of my death was an acceptable price to pay for her night out. It was a business decision, and I was the bad asset. So, Jessica said, crumpling up the bagel wrapper and tossing it, missing the trash can onto the floor. I was thinking, since the door is broken, maybe I should stay at your place tonight, to keep an eye on things. I stiffened. I don't think that's necessary, I said. Well, I can't stay at my place, she laughed, a short, nervous sound. My roommate is having people over, and I have such a headache. Plus, your house is closer to the contractor. I can just crash in my old room. She didn't want to protect the house. She wanted a free place to sleep off her hangover where she wouldn't be judged. No, I said. The word hung in the air. I rarely said no to Jessica. She frowned. What do you mean no? I mean no, I said. My voice was flat, monotone. I don't want you staying there. Why? She looked genuinely affronted. I'm trying to help you, Mom. I'm trying to secure the property. The police are patrolling, I lied. I didn't care if it was true. The officer told me no one should be in the house until the investigation is done. Investigation, she scoffed. It wasn't a burglary, Mom. It was a medical rescue. There's no investigation. They are investigating criminal negligence, I said, watching her face closely. And potential elder abuse. The laws are very strict about abandoned seniors. It was a bluff, but it landed like a hammer. Jessica flinched. Her color drained away beneath her bronzer. Her eyes darted to her phone, then back to me. That's ridiculous, she snapped, her voice pitching up an octave. You can't go to jail for a dead battery. That's not negligence, that's bad luck. Stop trying to scare me. You can't go to jail for a dead battery. She was terrified. She knew she had done something wrong, and her first instinct wasn't concern for me. It was fear for herself. I'm just telling you what the officer said, I whispered, closing my eyes. They take unanswered emergency calls very seriously. Whatever, she huffed, standing up abruptly. I'm not dealing with this. You're being so dramatic. I'll go stay at Tiffany S. But I need gas money, Mom. If I'm driving back and forth to meet this contractor for you, I can't do it on empty. She held out her hand. Do you have any cash, or can you sign another check for me? I signed the check, I said without opening my eyes. That's all I have. That check is for the contractor, she snapped. I'm talking about for me, for my trouble. For her trouble. The trouble of waiting for a contractor, while I lay in a hospital bed with failing kidneys. I don't have any cash, I said. She sighed a loud, dramatic exhale that rattled the plastic cup on the table. Unbelievable. Okay. Fine. I'll figure it out. I'm always the one figuring it out. She grabbed her purse, the purse containing the blank check. I'm going to head out, she said. I need to shower. I feel gross. I'll come back tomorrow afternoon, okay? Try not to make the nurses mad. She leaned down as if to kiss my cheek, but I turned my head away, feigning a cough. She kissed the air near my ear. Love you, she said automatically. It was a reflex, it meant nothing. Bye. Clack, clack, clack. The heels faded down the hallway. The elevator dinged. The doors slid shut. She was gone. I opened my eyes. The room was quiet again. The sun had completely set, and the only light came from the glowing monitors and the streetlights outside. I looked at the bagel raw. Peep-her on the floor. I looked at the empty chair. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't feel the urge to call her back. I didn't feel the worry about whether she would get home safe. I felt clarity. It was a sharp, cold clarity. I reached for my phone on the tray table. I unplugged it. I didn't want it tethered to the wall next to where she had been sitting. I pulled up the contact list. I stared at her name. Jessica, daughter 3. I tapped the edit button. I deleted the heart. Then I deleted the word daughter. I just left Jessica. It was a small thing, but it was the first step. I lay there in the dark, listening to the beep of the heart monitor. It was steady, strong. My heart was still beating despite everything. I thought about the little girl I used to walk to the bus stop. I thought about the mittens I used to pin to her coat so she wouldn't lose them. I thought about how I used to hold her hand when we crossed the street, squeezing it tight, terrified that if I let go, something bad would happen to her. I looked at her hands in my memory, not the little mittens, but the hands I had seen today. The manicured nails, the diamond ring I had bought her for her 30th birthday, the hands that had taken the blank check and stuffed it into her bag. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. I was done grieving. I looked at the clock on the wall. 7:00 p.m. It was Friday night. The banks were closed, but the online banking systems, they never slept, and the physical branches opened in 14 hours. I had given a desperate, greedy stranger a blank check signed with my name. I sat up, ignoring the pain in my kidneys. I had 14 hours to make sure that the hands that silenced my calls never touched my life savings. I didn't sleep Friday night. I didn't want to waste the time. At 7:05 p.m., moments after the elevator doors closed on Jessica and her clicking heels, I dialed the 24-hour customer service number on the back of my debit card. The automated voice was cheerful, frustratingly slow. For balance inquiries, press 1. For lost or stolen cards, press 2. I pressed 0 repeatedly. I needed a human. When a young man finally answered, "Thank you for calling First National. This is David." I didn't use my polite, old lady voice. I used the voice I used to use when I was a breathless executive secretary to the vice president of a logistics firm in the 80s. Crisp, direct, No room for argument. "David," I said, "my name is Susan Higgins. I am currently in the hospital. I need to place an immediate stop payment on a check, and I need to freeze my checking account for suspicious activity." "I can help with that, ma'am," he said, the clicking of his keyboard audible in the background. "What is the check number?" "It's the next one in the sequence," I said, my mind racing to visualize the book Jessica had pulled from my purse. "Check 402. But David, the check is blank. It is signed, but the amount is empty." There was a pause on the line. "I see. And who has the check, ma'am?" "A contractor," I lied. I wasn't ready to say my daughter to a stranger yet. The shame was still too fresh. "But I have reason to believe he is going to overcharge me significantly. I want to kill the check." "Done," David said. "I've placed a stop on check 402. Anyone trying to cash or deposit it will be flagged. Would you like to freeze the debit card as well?" "Yes," I said. "Freeze it all. No money goes out until I walk into a branch with my ID." "Understood. Your accounts are locked." I hung up the phone and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Tuesday. I looked at the phone. Jessica hadn't called back. She hadn't panic texted me asking why the card wasn't working. She hasn't tried to use it yet, I realized. She was smart in her own devious way. She had the blank check tucked in her purse. She knew it was Friday night. She probably reasoned that if she tried to mobile deposit a large check over the weekend, it might get held for review. She was waiting for Monday morning. She was waiting for the banks to open so she could walk in, write a number that suited her, 600, 800, maybe 1,000 for her trouble, and cash it instantly. She thought she was holding a winning lottery ticket. She didn't know she was holding a piece of paper that was already worthless. She didn't know she was walking into a trap. Saturday and Sunday were a blur of quiet productivity. Jessica didn't visit. She kept up the charade via text. Saturday, 11:00 a.m. Contractor is taking forever. So much dust. Staying at Tiff's tonight to stay out of the way. Love you. Sunday, 2:00 p.m. Do you need anything? I'm feeling super run down. Think I caught a bug from the garage incident. Staying in bed. She was avoiding me. She was scared of the elder abuse investigation I had invented, and she was likely annoyed that I hadn't given her cash for gas. She was biding her time until she could cash the check on Monday. I didn't. Reply to the texts. I was too busy saving my own life. I asked the nurse for a loaner iPad. I spent 48 hours building a fortress. I looked up my home's value on Zillow. It was paid off. Robert and I had bought it for nothing in the 70s, and now, in this market, it was worth a fortune. It was a 4-bedroom colonial sitting on a half-acre of prime real estate. To Jessica, that house was a future payday. It was her inheritance. It was the reason she felt comfortable ignoring my calls. She knew that eventually she would get the house. To me, it was now just a pile of bricks and wood with a broken front door. I researched assisted living with independence. I didn't want a nursing home. I wasn't an invalid. I was just diabetic and tired of being alone. I found a beautiful complex 3 towns over Greenwood Gardens. It had apartments, a garden, a library, and 24-hour medical staff. It was expensive. The monthly rent was more than my Social Security check. But looking at the Zillow estimate for my house, I did the math. If I sold the house, I could live in luxury at Greenwood Gardens for 20 years. I wouldn't have to worry about broken hips or insulin shocks or lonely New Year's Eves. And more importantly, I wouldn't need Jessica to check on me. Monday morning arrived with the bustle of doctor's rounds. My kidneys were functioning again. My sugar was stable. The doctor told me I was cleared for discharge that afternoon. "Do you have a ride?" he asked. "My daughter is picking me up at noon," I said. "Good," he smiled. "Going home will be good for you." "Home?" I didn't correct him. At 9:00 a.m., Mr. Henderson walked in. He was my estate lawyer. He looked out of place in the sterile hospital room in his wool suit, holding a leather briefcase. I had called his emergency line on Sunday. "Susan," he said, looking concerned, "is everything all right?" "I'm fine, Ralph," I said, sitting up straight. I had brushed my hair and put on a little lipstick. I wanted to look competent. But my estate plan isn't. I didn't beat around the bush. I didn't cry. I simply laid out the facts. I need to revoke Jessica's power of attorney, effective immediately. Mr. Henderson raised his eyebrows. "Medical and financial." "Both," I said, "especially medical. If I go into a coma again, Ralph, I cannot have that girl deciding whether to pull the plug. She proved on New Year's Eve that my life is not her priority." He opened his mouth to protest, to say surely not, but he saw the look in my eyes, the steel. He closed his mouth and opened his notepad. "Okay, who do you want to appoint?" "My nephew, David, in Ohio," I said. "He's a good boy. He's a CPA. He sends me a card every Christmas and never asks for a dime. Call him. He will receive the standard executor fees, of course, but I trust him not to steal from me." "Done," Ralph said, scribbling furiously. "And the will?" "Change it," I said. This was the hardest part. The words stuck in my throat for a moment, but then I saw the flash of the timestamp again. 11:55 p.m. "I want to sell the house," I said. "I'm moving into Greenwood Gardens. The proceeds from the sale will go into a trust for my care." "And the remainder?" Ralph asked. "If you pass away before the money runs out, does it revert to Jessica?" "No," I said firmly. "The remainder will be donated to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation." Ralph paused. He looked up at me over his reading glasses. "And Jessica, if you leave her nothing, Susan, she can contest the will. She can claim you were not of sound mind." "I know," I said. "So leave her the jewelry box. She likes shiny things. And leave her a cash bequest of $5,000. $5,000. Yes, I want it to be clear that I didn't forget her. I want it to be clear that I remembered her, and this is exactly what I chose to give her." "That sends a very specific message," Ralph warned softly. "I know," I said. "It's the price of a VIP table." We spent the next hour signing papers. Revocation of power of attorney, authorization to list real estate, new last will and testament. My hand didn't shake, not once. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. For years, I had been carrying the weight of Jessica's future. I worried about her rent, her car payments, her happiness. I had enabled her helplessness because I thought it was my job as a mother to catch her when she fell. But she wasn't falling, she was dancing. When I signed the final document, the one that legally removed her authority over my body and my bank account, I put the pen down on the rolling tray table. It made a sharp click sound. It was the sound of a lock engaging. "It's done," Mr. Henderson said, packing up his briefcase. "I'll file these with the court this afternoon. You are protected, Susan." "Thank you, Ralph," I said. He left the room and I was alone again. I looked at the clock. It was 11:30 a.m. Jessica would be here in 30 minutes. She would be walking in with a smile, expecting to drive me back to the colonial house. She was probably planning to tell me that she needed to move in for a few weeks to keep an eye on the broken door, which would really mean living rent-free while she looked for a new job or a new boyfriend. She was probably planning to stop at the bank on the way home to cash check 402. She thought she was driving me home to cook her dinner. She didn't know she was driving me to my new life. I poured myself a cup of water from the pitcher. My hand was steady as I lifted the cup to my lips. I signed the papers with a steady hand. It wasn't revenge, it was retirement. I was retiring from the job of being Jessica's safety net. At 12:00 p.m. sharp, Jessica walked into the room. She looked different today. The sequins were gone, replaced by a pair of expensive yoga pants and an oversized beige sweater that looked soft and responsible. Her hair was washed and blow-dried. She had that fresh, scrubbed look of someone who is trying very hard to appear wholesome. "Ready to bust out of here?" she asked, grabbing my overnight bag. She flashed a bright, brittle smile. "I pulled the car around front. I put the heated seat on for you." "Thank you," I said. I let her help me into the wheelchair. I let her wheel me down the hallway, past the nurse's station. I waved goodbye to the young nurse who had brought me back to life. Jessica didn't wave. She was texting as she pushed me, steering the chair with one hand. We got out to the curb, and she helped me into the passenger seat of her car. It smelled of vanilla air freshener, masking the faint, lingering scent of stale smoke from the weekend. "Okay," Jessica said, buckling her seatbelt and checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. "Here is the game plan. I'm going to swing by the bank first. I need to deposit that check for the contractor so I can pay him cash when we get to the house." Then I was thinking, since the door is boarded up and it's drafty, I'll just move into the master suite with you for a few weeks. To help you get around. She put the car in drive and pulled out into traffic. "I can give up my apartment for a month," she continued, her voice light and breezy. "My lease is up anyway, and my roommate is being a total witch, so it actually works out perfectly. I'll take care of you, you take care of me. Teamwork, right?" There it was, the plan. She wasn't just planning to cash the check. She was planning to move in. She was going to use my illness as an excuse to live rent-free in my house, in my bedroom, waiting for me to die so she wouldn't have to move out. I watched the familiar streets roll by. We were approaching the intersection. Left went to the bank. Right went to the highway. "Turn right," I said. Jessica blinked. "What? No, Mom, the bank is left, and the house is left." "We aren't going to the bank," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "And we aren't going to the house." "Mom, don't be weird. The contractor needs the money." "The check won't clear, Jessica," I said. "I stopped payment on it Friday night." The car swerved slightly. Jessica gripped the wheel, her knuckles turning white. You what?" "I called the bank," I said. "I stopped the check, and I froze the debit card. So there is no point in driving to the branch. The money is locked." She slammed on the brakes for a red light, turning to look at me with a mixture of shock and fury. The wholesome daughter mask slipped, revealing the panicked stranger beneath. "Why would you do that?" she shrieked. "I need that money to fix your door, and I have. I have expenses, Mom. I spent my own cash on gas and food this weekend waiting for you." "We aren't going home," I repeated, ignoring her outburst. "Take me to the Greenwood Gardens Welcome Center on Route 9. My intake interview is at 2:00 p.m. "Greenwood Gardens?" she laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "That luxury assisted living place. Mom, stop. You don't need assisted living. You're fine. You're coming home. I'm moving in to help you." "I am not going back to that house," I said. I turned to look at her. "I'm selling it, Jessica." The silence that filled the car was deafening. It was louder than the honking horns, louder than the radio. Jessica's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like she had been slapped. "You're selling the house," she whispered. "My childhood home." "It's a house," I corrected. "It's wood and brick, and it's too big for me. I'm selling it to pay for Greenwood Gardens." I did the math. "I can live there comfortably for 20 years. I'll have meals cooked for me. I'll have nurses down the hall. I won't have to worry about dying on the floor alone." But she was stammering now, her eyes wide with panic. "But what about the inheritance? Dad built that house for us." "Dad built that house for me," I said sharply, "to be safe, and I haven't been safe there, not lately." The light turned green. Someone honked behind us. Jessica slammed her foot on the gas, car lurching forward. "This is insane," she yelled, hitting the steering wheel. "You're having a mental breakdown. It's the ketones or whatever. I'm calling the lawyer. You can't just sell the house without telling me. I was counting on that house." "I know you were," I said. "And what about me?" she screamed, tears finally starting to form, angry tears. "My lease is up in 30 days. I told you my roommate is kicking me out. I can't afford a deposit on a new place right now. I was going to stay with you to save money." "You have 30 days," I said calmly. "I suggest you start looking for a smaller apartment or maybe get a second job." "A second job?" She looked at me with pure hatred. "I work my ass off. I had one night off. One night. And because my car battery died and I couldn't get to you fast enough, you're punishing me. You're ruining my life because of a dead battery." I looked at her. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't need to. "I don't need to look at your phone, Jessica," I said softly. "What?" She glanced at me, confused. "I unlocked it while you were out getting bagels on Friday," I said. "I saw the album, The Fourth Foe." Jessica went rigid. The car began to drift toward the shoulder. "I saw the man in the tuxedo," I recited, my voice cold and precise. "I saw the sparkler in your left hand. I saw the martini in your right. And I saw the timestamp." I paused, letting the numbers hang in the air like a sentence. 11:55 p.m. Jessica slammed the car into park on the gravel shoulder. Dust kicked up around the windows. She stared at the dashboard. Her face went pale, then red. "You went through my phone," she hissed. "You were dancing," I said. "At 11:55 p.m. You weren't stranded, you weren't freezing, you were dancing." I waited for the shame. I waited for the apology. I waited for her to say, "I'm sorry, I was drunk, I made a mistake." But Jessica didn't apologize. She threw her hands up. "So what?" she screamed. "So what if I stayed? What was I supposed to do, Mom? You called me at 7:30. The party had just started. I paid $300 for that ticket. Was I supposed to leave because you're clumsy and dropped a bottle?" "Yes," I said. "That is exactly what you were supposed to do." "I thought you would be fine," she yelled. "You're always dramatic. I thought you could wait until morning. I didn't think you were actually going to die." "You gambled," I said. "You bet my life against a party, and you lost." "I didn't lose," she pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're fine, you're sitting right there, but now you're punishing me financially. You're cutting me off." She was hyperventilating now, clutching her chest. "You made me this way," she shrieked. "You never taught me how to manage money. You crippled me, Mom. You made me depend on you, and now you're abandoning me because you're bored. You owe me. You can't just quit." "I am retiring," I said, looking out the window at the passing trees. "I am retiring from the job of being your safety net. Drive the car, Jessica." "No," she screamed. "I'm not driving you anywhere until you sign a check. I have $600 due on my credit card tomorrow." "The accounts are frozen," I said. "Drive the car, or I will call the police and tell them you are holding me against my will. And since there is already a record of negligence from New Year's Eve." She froze. She gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. She looked at me, and I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. She realized she had no leverage. She realized the bank was closed to her. She realized she was alone. She put the car in drive. She pulled back onto the road. She didn't speak for the rest of the ride. She sniffled, wiping her nose with her sleeve, muttering under her breath about how unfair it was, about how cruel I was. When we pulled up to the grand entrance of Greenwood Gardens, it looked like a hotel. There were fountains. There were manicured hedges. A concierge was waiting by the door with a luggage cart. Jessica stopped the car. She didn't get out to help me. I opened the door myself. I grabbed my bag. Jessica didn't look at me. She was staring straight ahead, her jaw set. "Jessica," I said, pausing with one foot on the pavement. She didn't turn. "I hope the party was worth it," I said. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were dry, cold, calculating. "You're going to regret this," she said. "When you're alone in that home and no one visits you, you're going to regret cutting me off." "But who will pay the bills?" she added, her voice cracking, not with sadness, but with genuine financial terror. "I can't afford rent. You can't do this to me." "Goodbye, Jessica," I said. I shut the car door. It made a solid, final thud. I sat in the wheelchair the concierge brought over and let him wheel me away toward the glass doors. I didn't look back. I heard the engine rev, heard the tires screech as she peeled out of the driveway. She didn't say, "I'll miss you," she said. "I can't afford a deposit on a new place." And that was all the closure I needed. It has been 3 months since I shut the car door on my daughter. It is April now. The winter is finally gone. The snow that covered the driveway on New Year's Eve has melted away, and the world is turning green again. I am sitting on the balcony of my new apartment at Greenwood Gardens. It is small, much smaller than the colonial house on Oak Street, but it is flooded with sunlight. I have a view of the courtyard, where the cherry blossoms are just starting to pop, explosions of pink against the blue sky. I have a cup of tea in my hand, Earl Grey, hot. And for the first time in 20 years, my phone is not in my pocket. It is on the kitchen counter, charging. I don't check it every 5 minutes. I don't listen for the phantom buzz of a text message. The silence here is different. In the old house, the silence was heavy. It was a waiting silence. It was the silence of a woman listening for a car in the driveway, listening for a key in the lock, listening for the phone to ring. It was a silence that asked, "Has she forgotten me?" Here, the silence is light. It is peaceful. It is the silence of a woman who knows exactly where she is and who she is. The house sold in 2 weeks. The market was hot, just as Mr. Henderson predicted. A nice young couple bought it, a doctor and his wife, expecting their first baby. When I signed the closing papers, I thought I would cry. I thought I would mourn the loss of the living room where Robert and I watched TV, the kitchen where I baked birthday cakes, the hallway where Jessica learned to walk. But as I handed over the keys, I didn't feel grief. I felt like I was putting down a heavy backpack I had been carrying for miles. I took the check from the sale, and I deposited it directly into the trust Mr. Henderson set up. It pays for this apartment. It pays for the meal plan. It pays for the housekeeping. And it pays for the nurse, Sarah, who knocks on my door every morning at 8:00 a.m. to check my blood sugar and chat about the weather. I am safe here. If I fall, a sensor in the floor alerts the front desk. If my sugar drops, Sarah is down the hall. I don't need to beg anyone to save me anymore. As for Jessica, she tried, of course. For the first month, my phone blew up. First, it was anger. Long, rambling texts about how I was selfish, how I was vindictive, how I was stealing her birthright. Then it was panic. "Mom, the contractor is threatening to sue me. Mom, my landlord is keeping my deposit. Mom, I can't make my car payment." I didn't reply. I forwarded the legal threats to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson enjoyed that part. He took great pleasure in telling the contractor that since I never signed a work order, the debt belonged entirely to the person who called him. Jessica is paying off that door frame in installments. It seems only fair. She broke the door in more ways than one, so she is the one paying to fix it. Then came the love bomb, the sudden, desperate affection. She sent flowers, cheap carnations from a gas station, with a card that said, "I miss my best friend." She left voicemails crying, saying she was sorry, saying she didn't mean it, saying she was just stressed. I listened to them, I saved them, but I didn't call back. Because I know the truth now. She doesn't miss her best friend. She misses her ATM. She misses the woman who fixed everything. She misses the safety net. I heard from my nephew, David, that she moved in with Tiffany. Apparently, it lasted 3 weeks before Tiffany kicked her out for not paying her share of the utilities. Now, she is living in a studio apartment on the other side of town, working as a bartender to make ends meet. She is figuring it out. For the first time in her life, she is feeling the cold wind of the world without me standing in front of her to block it. And as hard as it is for a mother to say this, it is good for her. She is 32 years old. It is time she learned that actions have consequences, and that "I'm sorry" doesn't refill a bank account or restart a heart. She still texts me occasionally, usually on Sundays, usually when she's lonely. "Hey mom, thinking of you." I text back, but I don't ask questions. I don't give her an opening to complain. "Glad to hear you are safe." That's it, polite, distant, like an aunt or an old family friend. I don't invite her to visit, not yet. Maybe one day, when she has grown up, when she has learned to value people over parties, I will invite her for tea. But I will never give her a key to this apartment, and I will never, ever put her back on my bank account. The trust is gone, and trust is like a mirror. Once it's shattered, you can glue it back together, but you can still see the cracks. And I don't want to look at the cracks anymore. "Susan." I look down at the courtyard. Betty, my neighbor from 3B, is waving at me. She's wearing a bright purple sun hat and Holden. G, a gardening trowel. "Are you coming down?" she yells. "The book club starts in 10 minutes. We're discussing the new mystery novel." "I'll be right there," I call back. I smile. I have friends here. Real friends. Friends who ask how I am because they care, not because they want something. We look out for each other. I finish my tea and stand up. My knees ache a little, the damp spring air, but I feel strong. I walk into the kitchen to rinse my cup. I pass the mirror in the hallway, and I stop to look at myself. I look older than I did on New Year's Eve. The stress of that night took something from me, physically. My hair is a little thinner, my face a little more lined. But my eyes are different. On New Year's Eve, my eyes were fearful. They were pleading. They were the eyes of a woman who was terrified of being a burden. Now my eyes are clear. They are the eyes of a woman who knows her worth. I realized something in the hospital that day, looking at the empty chair. There are 2 kinds of being alone. There is the loneliness of waiting for someone who isn't coming. That is a hollow, aching pain that eats you alive. And then there is the solitude of being with yourself. That is a rich, quiet peace. I am alone in this apartment, but I am not lonely. I have my books, I have my garden, I have Betty and Sarah. I grabbed my copy of the mystery novel from the counter. I checked my insulin pump, fully charged, fully loaded. I picked up my phone, not to check for Jessica, but to take a picture of the cherry blossoms. I wanted to send it to David. He texted me this morning. He's coming to visit next week with his fiancée. I promised to bake them a cake in the community kitchen. It feels good to have family who actually wants to see you. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. I thought about Jessica one last time as I walked to the elevator. I hope she finds her way. I hope she finds someone to love her who teaches her how to be selfless. I hope she grows up. But I am done waiting for her to do it. I spent 40 years worrying about her. Now, I spend my time worrying about which book to read next. I survived that night for a reason, and it wasn't to be treated like an option in my own life.